My name is Daniel Giovanelli. I'm with Breeze in Yoga. And at the studio today, just going to spend some time talking about plank pose. So feeling better in plank pose can be a game changer for your yoga practice. Plank pose is one of those transitional poses, but a lot of times it's really a foundational pose for your practice. And we're going to jump right in. I'm not going to waste your time. We're going to move into plank pose, and there are several ways to do. So coming from lying on our bellies, we can just press up and float up into plank pose. And you can see here in my alignment, my knees are behind my hips, and my wrists are underneath my elbows, underneath my shoulders. Now, first step to finding a better plank pose is you can check in and find your kneeling plank pose, all right? Now, we want the chest open, so you can see here opening up through the chest, shoulder blades are moving together, and you can start in plank. When you start in kneeling plank, your navel is already drawing in towards the back body, you're engaged through your back, and there's a long straight line from the crown of your head to your knees. And you can stay here, find your breath, right? Expand through the chest, soften the elbows. And what I mean by that is if your elbow locks out to the front, you want to turn inward rotation and soften the elbow here, just a micro bend to the elbow. You're saying, Daniel, it doesn't look like you're feeling any better in plank pose. Well, first step is kneeling. You can find a better adjustment if plank pose is really hard for you to find it kneeling. Second way is to move into a forearm plank, is another modification, and then you can float the knees off of the mat. All right, so this one is very good if you have sometimes issues with your wrists, and if that's what you feel most discomfort, you can press down. Now lowering hips and coming into little Sphinx pose so I can talk to you. So one of the other really important keys in plank pose you're going to see is not only core strength, but it does require some arm strength. There are tons of ways to get arm strength, but a way that I like to share with my students is a way that ties in with yoga, right? So it's a little bit of a vinyasa, it's a little flow that I like to do. Helps build up these guns right here that you need, and it also helps build up the core. So I'm going to show you flowing through that. When we come down, we bring our hands there underneath the shoulders, elbows. If they're out to the side, you want to tuck them in, right? And we're going to float up into that kneeling plank, and then slide the hips back towards the child's pose. From child's pose, we're going to keep the elbows in tight, and we're going to float forward on our mat and come down. All right, so in this going to be like the arms on the wheel of a train, right? So we're going to do this motion, chugga, 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 again and again, right? So we slide the hips back, going up, and then we slither forward on the mat, and then press up, and then slide back, and then floating forward once again on the mat, and then pressing up and sliding back. Good. Doing a couple more, floating forward and pressing up. We try to keep the elbows in close to the rib cage most of the movement here so that you build strength in your arms as well as your chest when floating back. So it gives you a little bit of a break. Right? So let's do one last one. You can do this maybe 10 times on one side in one variation, and then 10 times we're going to do the reverse. So from kneeling plank, and this is all coming from kneeling plank. This video is really for those of us that are starting out and building strength and learning the best yoga for our bodies. So the reverse on this, you're going to come down halfway till your elbows are next to your rib cage. So you notice here, elbow is close to the rib cage, right? And then floating back. All right, so now I round up almost like through a cat pose and moving back to that kneeling plank, and then come down halfway and then press the hips back. Good. Inhale, floating up. Reset here. Be sure to be strong through your core. And then come down. Halfway only. And float back. Very good. And you say, well, I really like the full plank. Daniel, can I do it from a full plank? Absolutely. You bring the feet underneath. Float halfway. And then slide back. You can lower the knees down for a moment there. Round to the top. And then press up. Good. Come down halfway. Slide back. And press up. Now notice that my hips are not going really high up in the air even when I come back. I'm not trying to push hips up really high and overarching the lumbar here, right? So you don't need this curve being really accentuated. Trying to keep a neutral spine through there. That's going to be different for most of us. So we'll float back and then come up. Right, and you can be in your full or your kneeling plank and do a few more, just building strength in that arm. Floating back and reset to the top. Good, let's do one last one. Bringing it down, sending it back, floating it up to the top. Very good. So, show you in a different angle here what this pose would look like. So a lot of times I see plank and folks are down here, their knees really underneath or their shoulders ahead of their, shoulders being ahead of the arms. You really want to be able to keep your shoulder in line with your elbow, in line with your wrist. Okay? So showing this from a different angle, where from the kneeling plank you're here, or from the full plank, we're here. If the hips are really floating up, you're between a plank and a down dog, and that's really hard. So it doesn't have to be that hard. Your hips lower down, your navel draws into the back, you're feeling good. So it gets hard, right? The important thing is to find the variations for your body that makes you feel good in plank pose. So the last one here, so the pose is to build strength, floating halfway down, sliding the hips back to child's pose, and then rounding up, reset, float halfway down, and then back. Good, rounding up, down, and back. And then the other building supposed to build strength here is we float forward, and then press up, and then float back. So it's just the reverse here. So if you imagine my torso being that arm that connects the wheels of a train and how that arm moves back and forth, that's kind of what I'm doing here with the upper body. And building up. Very good. So walking here, the hands back. Now let's take a break in kneeling pose. So you say, Daniel, what else can help my plank pose? Well, taking care of your wrists. Right, so really good wrist stretch, taking your fingers forward, and you can draw your hands back lightly. Fingers back lightly. And then also point your fingers down and stretch through the top of your wrist. Good. You don't want to overstretch. You have a lot of power in your hands, so you can do small wrist circles, and then switch and do the other side. A little drawing of your fingers back, a slight bend here to the elbow to do that. And then point fingers down and do small wrist rotations. Another good one is to interlace your fingers together and guide your wrists in small circles. So this is an even safer way for your wrist stretches. Right? So again, I told you I wanted to keep this a little bit short. We're just breaking down plank pose. Best ways to modify, adjust it to our practice. We, again, just want to be able to take our time, learn the pose that fits our body. If you need a modification for your knees, modify it down to your knees. You need to build more arm strength or maintain core strength, then check out those 2 little vinyasas that we did, a little flow. And I hope to see you here at the studio in Lincolnton. Until next time. Namaste.